2022 at 10 a.m. This meeting will come to order, and I am Kathleen Ruth, the Vice Chair. Our Chair, Kathy Woolard, is delayed but will join us shortly. I'm joined today by colleagues Terry Crawford to my left, Aaron Johnson to my far right, and Mark Wingate. With that, we constitute a quorum, and this meeting is officially called to order. Our first item of business is to approve today's agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve today's agenda. At this time, if you could silence your cell phones. And now we will move into communications and public response. We have a number of public response. Each speaker will be granted 2 minutes, each up to 2 minutes each, and you will be silenced, buzzed to wrap up. So our first person is Naya Corsten. I'm sorry, hang on just a second. Oh, we didn't vote. Sorry, I missed a step. So let's vote on approving the agenda.
Aye.
Ayes?
Aye.
Okay. So this motion passes. The agenda is approved. Now going into public comment, Naya Corsten. I'm sorry, Ms. Corsten, is your mic on? We want to make sure everyone hears you.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And if you could speak in directly into the mic.
All right. Is that good? Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Quote, if we don't believe in freedom of expression for people we disagree with, we don't believe in it at all, unquote. I am here to formally request that you do not amend Article 3, Section 4. As you are aware, the article provides an opportunity for citizens like me to provide comment on issues that are being discussed and voted on by the Board of Registration and Elections. Why would you remove this? What are your motives? Before voting, each one of you needs to ask and answer these questions for yourselves and the people you represent. Are you trying to suppress freedom of speech? If so, again, why? As the primary elections will commence in less than 90 days, there is still much work to be done. Approving the budget is at the top of the list. Despite an already bloated budget, Richard Barron and his department seems to believe that for Fulton County to hold an effective election, additional funds need to be allocated. I strongly disagree. I volunteered as a poll watcher for most of my early voting and as a poll worker on Election Day. During my time as a poll watcher, I made several observations. First, an overabundance of workers and machines were present. During one of my 4-hour shifts, only 8 voters showed up to vote, with nearly a dozen employees manning the polls. This was not an exception, but rather the rule for most of the 19 days of early voting. It was evident that way too many employees were working with little to do. This makes no sense. The preponderance of votes came during the last week and most during the last few days of early voting. You don't need to be a poll watcher to report this. The data is available. I would encourage you and those in charge of scheduling workers and machines to appropriately assign and manage the appropriate amount for optimized efficiency. This not only will reduce costs, but the number of workers needed, which seems to be an ongoing issue in our elections. I am here as a concerned citizen who is interested in ensuring that elections are transparent, efficient, and fair for all voters. Do not remove my constitutional right to voice my concerns. So shall it be written, so shall it be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corsten. Next, we have Rich Thompson.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Rich Thompson, a proud Fulton County voter. I wanted to bring your attention that it was my hope today to have several names that I submitted for a challenge reviewed by this body, but it was I was informed that there was a slight little snafu somewhere, some technical difficulty that prevented those 498 names from being reviewed for your decision today. So I would like to respectfully request that at some point in the very near future, you designate a special meeting whereby those names could be reviewed and some decision could be made. While I understand that there's a process that's going to happen sometime very soon, like around the 13th of this month, to do a cleanup, I respectfully request that we make sure that these names that I submitted that have not been reviewed, or at least verified that they are reviewed and removed as a part of that cleanup. So I think to do that more effectively, a special hearing would be in order, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next, we have Julie Adams.
Hello. I come here to these meetings as a resident of Fulton County, and my goal, and I believe a lot of the speakers' goals, are to have free, fair, and transparent elections. I was upset before that special meetings were not announced, or we've seen several times they go online just a couple of hours before they happen, which prevents the public from attending. Now, to take away our ability to speak at those meetings, it's not going with that transparent. It's more like hiding behind the curtain. And I think that we should be able to speak. The other thing that I want to say is this week I have gotten calls from someone in Washington State and Washington, D.C. And their quotes to me, one of them said, Fulton County is the epicenter of poorly run elections. And the other one said pretty much the same thing, can't repeat everything the other person said about Fulton County when they realized that's where I lived. One of them asked me, was it really true that we had a non-citizen managing one of the most important parts of our election, which is the technical systems? And I had to say yes. They jokingly asked me if we were going to hire somebody to manage absentee ballots that was a Chinese national. And so I just think that a lot of consideration needs to be done for us to achieve free and fair elections. And I want to say that if you do vote in that we can't speak, we will have a big contingency here at your next special meeting, like we did with the BOC over the Happy Faces issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Our next speaker is Kevin Muldowney.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth. You pronounced that correctly. I appreciate that. Kevin Muldowney from Alpharetta. The community poll worker proposal that was presented in the call to the call with the commissioners and the city mayors on Feb 4th is exactly the same model that's been used in the past. It may have sounded somewhat interesting to a newly elected mayor on the job for only a few weeks, but upon closer examination, it's quite apparent that it's nothing new. Fulton has an existing pool of trained and capable election workers. The county currently employs and trains just under 3,000 civic-minded citizens every election cycle, but they only get to work on election day and only in precincts as poll workers and poll managers. Having personally gone through Fulton County's election day training for both poll worker and poll manager, I would have to say it sounds far superior to the training experience provided by Happy Days Temp Agency. We need to tap into this existing trained stakeholder pool and give them the opportunity to work all aspects of the election cycle that the temp workers are currently performing, such as early poll workers, poll managers, compliance, absentee ballot processing, tabulating, military ballot processing, LNA testing, et cetera. These functions are currently being staffed by temp workers from the very same temp agency that Richard Barron asserted I don't know how they hire or how they vet them. The idea is to have stakeholders involved that have a vested interest in getting the process done accurately and not just going up there as a temp worker was overheard saying, well, I'm going to mess stuff up. Another matter that bears mentioning is the proposal by Ms. Woolard to suppress and cease public comments during the special meetings of the BRE.
Mr. Muldowney, your time is up.
Oh,
Sorry,
man.
just,
Don't make any changes to Article 3, Section 4, please.
thank you. Thanks so much. Our next speaker is Maria Gavdio, and please correct me if I mispronounced your name.
Thank you. I don't typically do things like this, where speaking in front of people about problems. And so now that I've heard that Article 3, Section 4, our limited ability to make a comment is threatened, I definitely need to speak up. For 3 elections, my polling location was moved at the last minute. And I learned after the first time to make sure that I check in the morning of the election, but once I got to the poll, it was moved. Not just mine, but many others. And it's happened 3 elections in a row. And it really discourages a lot of people from voting. You know, when Christmas is always on the 25th and Halloween's always the 31st, and you look forward to the festivities of the day, and a lot of people want to vote on voting on Election Day. So I have witnessed, and then I started working as a poll volunteer, and I saw people who waited in line, and most of the time it's first thing in the morning, lunchtime, and in the evening, that they could get off of work or work their schedule around, and they wait in line, and it's not till they get up to the front that they find out their polling location has moved. Some people get pissed off and they leave, and who knows if they go to the other polling location, but our hunch is, especially at lunchtime or in the morning, if they have to get to work, they're not even going to vote. So I'm sick of that. I went to do early voting in a camper or bus, whatever you call it, and I was attacked by a representative from Happy Faces. I wanted to get her name. Nobody would give me the name. They don't have name tags, so I called the police. So I got 2 police reports, one from Milton, one from Alpharetta, because where the event happened, it's right on the border. It was a mess. Anyway, the people were rude. They were unkept.
Miss Maria, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a card here for Lucia, but there's no last name. And can you say your name, please?
Hi, Lucia Frazier. All right, so I'm here to talk about mostly money. The budget request has a lot of waste built into it in our election operations. So asking for 37 million sounds just ridiculous. There's a lot of ways we can save some money. In the staffing model right now includes way too many workers. There's 13 people assigned to every precinct for early voting. I know we don't need that many. 7 of them are clerks. I know we don't need that many. Compliance officers is a new thing that was added last year. We don't need that either. Poll manager did that before. They can do it again. You can also give the poll manager the opportunity to get the poll tech certificate, and they can just manage that as needed. The staffing model also includes too many days for most of these positions. I see that they're listed from like advanced voting from 3/17 to 6/17, and you only need them from 5/2 to 5/20. Absentee ballot openers are shown from 3/30 to 6/7. Absentee ballots don't get mailed till 4/25. So let's check and make sure that they're not on record being paid for all those days. Poll worker pay. There's talk today about increasing that, which I would only agree with for people that are working like all the days, like a poll manager. But for all the other roles, I would say you don't need to increase it. This needs to be more of a civic duty. And you need to break out these jobs to one-day increments, especially for early voting. Right now, they're listed as a 5-week commitment. I can't do 5 weeks, but I'm happy to do 2 or 3 days a week. So you're getting 2,700 people for one day on election day, so you're able to do it.
Thank you, your time, thank you. Next, we have Susan Ortez Villages, and if you please would state your name with the correct pronunciation. Thanks.
Thank you for trying. My name is Susan Ortiz Villajos. I was happy to see the Fulton County website has finally been updated so residents can apply there for early voting clerk and other positions in addition to Election Day. I hope this will eliminate the 17-step process that was necessary for the Happy Faces application, which included uploading a resume. Quite ridiculous for a poll worker. I'm also hoping to see improvements in the early voting poll worker training. For the municipal elections, I was given a one-day notice of the training at the English Street Warehouse, which would involve 3 consecutive days. Day 1 was to be just swearing in and being deputized. Some people thought this would be quick and didn't plan to spend the whole day there, only to find out this was a regular training day, except for the fact that no one's login credentials worked. We were sent to go eat lunch eventually, and when we came back, we were still unable to log into ElectionNet, so we were sent home. Day 2, we still couldn't log in and watched some training videos, and we sat around for hours talking. No one seemed to care because we were being paid by the hour. Finally, on day 3, the real hands-on training took place. In conclusion, it seems training could be condensed to one day if proper preparations were made so that everyone can log in. The early voting poll worker jobs would probably also be much easier to fill if you offered multiple locations for training, like you do for Election Day. And now the time commitment seems to have gotten even worse. From working 19 days straight, the expectation on the website says it is a 5-week commitment for early voting. What is so hard about allowing part-time work, 2, 3, or 5 days a week? I think you need to look at other counties like Forsyth County to see how to run an efficient and well-organized election. Humble yourselves
Thank
and
you
go
so
and
much.
learn how they do it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sandra Bouchard.
My name is Sandra Burkhart. I live in Fulton County. Ever since I saw the video taken by security cameras, I have been concerned about the elections in Fulton County. As a result, I have become involved, and I thank God for the privilege. I pray a lot, and I'm looking forward to things changing. However, having attended many Fulton County Commissioner meetings and some of the board meetings here, I continue to be disappointed. I have been involved in elections, and I have seen equipment beyond whatever's reasonable. I have seen people turned away because they weren't turned away, they were redirected because they were at the wrong place to vote. It distresses me greatly because over half the people that showed up at the polling place I was worked were redirected. I think things can be improved, but I don't think anything will improve as long as we continue to depend on people like Richard Barron and their assessment of equipment needs instead of the needs of the people and the transparency of our elections. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And I also have a card for Jason, no last name. And Jason, it looks like you are talking about voter roll challenge.
Yes.
Does it have to do with the challenge that's on the
Well,
agenda today?
yeah, that is why I came, and similar to the other gentleman, I turned in a handful of names last week, and apparently they didn't, there wasn't enough time to process them to go over those challenges today, so I just wanted to speak in the public comment instead.
Okay, great, go ahead.
All right, and I don't know if it's a process change or what, but if somebody could raise a hand like 15 seconds early or something instead of the 2 minutes, I'm done, I think that would go a long way to help the speakers.
I have a timer, so I'll try to do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, so I wasn't totally prepared with a speech because I thought I'd be challenging voter rolls, but I wanted to bring up a couple things. I have a strong ops background, and the main reason I'm here is to try to learn what the process is to clean up the voter rolls. I just got into this the other day, and I quickly found and turned in 44 people on the voter rolls that had deceased. One passed away as long ago as 2009, and somehow they've missed and slipped through the cracks. And I just, again, not knowing the process, I just figured, Google the name, type obituary, see who shows up. And so I found obituaries and lined up to make sure that that was the exact same person. And it's easy to find them. I mean, obviously, there aren't enough people looking, or they could find them. And I guess financially speaking, if we require 1 BMD per every 250 people, then the gentleman back here with almost 500 voters getting cleaned off the rolls and my 44 dead individuals, that's, 2+ BMDs that could be removed. So all this work to clean up voter rolls directly impacts our tax dollars and saving money. The other process that I'm trying to understand is how do we clean up some of the other issues? Like I just looked up the UPS store down the street from my house, and there were seven people listed there. I know they don't live in that little box. So a process so that way myself and others know how to contribute. I mean, we're just trying to help the city, help the county. All right, so that's my main objective. And if they could have a special hearing to help work through those and understand the process so we can improve and help give back, that'd be great.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Jason, can you tell us your last name? I don't think you gave us. Frazier.
Yes, sorry about that.
And our last speaker card I have is Bridget Thorne.
Hello. I want to thank you for trying to involve the community more in the election process. I think it's the right step in restoring trust in our elections. Now I think it's imperative that Fulton Elections stops wasting taxpayer dollars and operate in a more efficient manner. The embattled Richard Barron is going to the media and saying that he's facing funding challenges with his $37 million budget. Okay, you had $44 million that was spent in 2020. In analyzing the $25 million expenses that were handed over to the auditor, $7.3 million was spent in non-agency capital. That is equipment that you shouldn't have to buy again. $6.5 million was spent on COVID expenses. We shouldn't have to spend that again. That is $13.8 million total. A $37 million budget is overly generous by the commissioners. Stop overstaffing. Prior to 2020, as a precinct manager, I would have 8 workers. Now that number is about 14. Great, now I have 5 or 6 workers who get to play basketball in the school gymnasium. It's ridiculous and it's wasteful. There is no need for line monitors when you have no lines. There is no need for a compliance officer to be placed in every early voting precinct. The manager should be responsible for reconciliation reports. We do not need compliance managers that drive from Athens to work in Alpharetta to run a reconciliation report. Friends who worked early said they were trained for 3 days, but got about 3 hours worth of meaningful training, but they were being paid. There's no need for a poll tech in every precinct. Allow qualified managers and assistant managers to get poll tech training, then pay them a little bit more for this certification. There is no need for additional provisional ballot clerks. An assistant manager should be trained in this area. Most precincts only have 0 or a handful of provisional ballots cast. And stop over-equipping.
Thank you, Ms. Thorne. Thank you.
And Ms. Woolard, I wish you would have listened to the comments about your Section 3 amendment that you're trying to pass today.
Thank you, Ms.
It's unfortunate you
Thorne.
missed that.
Now I will think that's the end of public comment, and I will turn this over to our chair.
Thank you. Thanks for covering. I appreciate it. Working full-time is overrated, I will say, and I had a meeting that went long. Let's see. So we are now at the approval of the agenda, is that right? Approval of the minutes. Okay, and we have quite a few amendments, minutes, because we deferred some of the approval to the last time. Did you need a copy of this? I have a copy of it. Let's just get to the approval of the minutes, and then I'll dig it out and give it to you. Does anybody want to make a motion on the minutes? Corrections, amendments? Mr. Wingate?
Madam Chair, I've got a question from our meeting of January 13th, 2022. I had requested that the board be given updated SOPs, of which the reply from Mr. Barron was that they would be emailed to the board. I have not seen anything yet.
Okay.
I'm just curious if that is work in progress so we can get it, or if it has not been looked at all.
If I remember correctly, we were told at the last meeting that the SOPs were available through the portal now, since we all have working email addresses.
Have you seen them?
No, I was going to ask how to get to them, but that the files were too big to send to us, is what they said.
All right, so what is appropriate at this minute is a motion to approve or amend the minutes. So we can follow up on that.
Mine was strictly a question.
Yeah, I know. Anybody else, any amendments?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
Okay, the motion is to approve the special meeting minutes of December 4th, the regular meeting of December 9th, the executive session meeting December 9th, special meeting December 17th, executive session meeting December 17th, and regular meeting of January 13th. Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The motion carries. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Mr. Barron is out ill today. He texted me early this morning. So, Patrick, Mr. Escray, do you want to lead us through?
In the Elections Division, staff is currently conducting inventory and preparing for the full usage of the WDS inventory system. Under logistics and polling locations, 13 polling place changes proposals will be presented to the BRE at today's meeting. Redistricting is currently being conducted, and we do not anticipate any polling place changes that necessitate BRE approval per redistricting. Proposals and maps of redistricting changes will be provided for information purposes once completed. We've been given a deadline for February 18th by the SOS. All 9 check-in locations will be utilized for the May 22 elections, and facility reservations have been confirmed. Advanced voting locations, dates, and hours for the May election have been posted to the Fulton County website. Preparation for recruitment and training are being conducted currently. The approved absentee ballot drop box locations have been posted on Fulton County's website. Signage to provide clear guidelines on the usage are being created as advanced voting supply the items. In the area of poll worker recruitment and training, all training documents are currently being reviewed for any necessary edits and updates. Recruitment for Election Day workers has commenced. Poll managers have been emailed to confirm availability for the upcoming election. Recruitment poll worker emails have been forwarded to the Election Day polling site staff and county employees. We've reached out to all municipalities to conduct recruitment fairs, and the following recruitment fairs have been scheduled with the city of Chattahoochee Hills, and with a pending date of February 22nd, along with the city of Alpharetta, which is confirmed of the March 5th as their recruitment date. In the registration division, the total number of Voter registration applications we received in 2022 is 5,997. This number includes voter registration application received via the Department of Driver Services, the online voter registration portal with the Secretary of State's office, applications from third-party vendors, and applications mailed or dropped off at the office. As of January 31st, there are 845,797 registered voters, with 757,650 being active and 88,147 of those are inactive. Late in January, the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections received 3 challenge notices. The electors are challenging the residency status of 539 electors in the state of Georgia. The challenge hearing will be held again on today. The VR division is tasked with researching the residency status of these electors, and there will be a status update in the March operations report. On January 4th, our office mailed out the NCOA confirmation notices required by the SOS. These voters will receive a 40-day timeline to respond. The 40-day clock on these notices will expire on Sunday, February 13th. The following week, the voters that did not respond will need to be updated in ElectionNet, and we have received 544 of those responses. The Secretary of State's office has given the deadline again of February 18th. We have begun updating the streets inside of Fulton to make the changes received to date. So far, we've received the state, House, congressional, Senate districts in addition to the county school board, and we're awaiting the updated county commission districts and the City of Atlanta School Board. In the administrative division, we have the following vacancies. The registration officer, we have currently 8 vacant positions, and we have conducted interviews for those vacancies this week. The absentee officer position has been filled and offered. The election system specialist will be preparing for interviews this week, along with the administrative specialist. The registration, we conducted the interviews and extended an offer. The new registration chief is our current registration manager, Ms. Shamira Marshall. She'll be promoted to registration chief beginning February 16th. The administrative manager will also be preparing and conducting those interviews by next week. The qualification of candidates, the qualification period is scheduled for 9 a.m. March 7th to noon, March 11th. The nonpartisan offices of state court judge, magistrate judge, and Board of Education members will qualify in our office. The partisan offices of Board of Commissioners will qualify at their party's executive committee office. Under voter education, the VEO team began implementing the 2022 voter education outreach plan in January. The manager hosted meetings with several mayors and municipalities to schedule future events. She also met with external affairs to ensure that there's collateral, for the voter education outreach team to enhance the department's brand and footprint. She worked on updating the content of the Fulton County website to include the 2022 updates and the 2022 qualifying information for candidates. The VEO team is partnered with Georgia State University to host bi-monthly voter education outreach events through the end of April 2022. They're also working on in conversation with several other universities in the area to host events on campus, such as Georgia Tech, Clark Atlanta University, Oglethorpe University, Morehouse, and Atlanta Technical College. In the absentee division, personnel has continuously conducted and undergone training and are currently scanning and indexing. And the earliest day to apply for absentee ballot for the May general election is March 7th. And this concludes the monthly operations report.
Are there any questions? Dr. Ruth? You look like you had a question. Okay.
Mr. Estridge, remind me, please, from the SOS and COA that we mailed out on January the 4th, what was that total number?
I will defer to.
Good morning, 55,463.
Thank you.
Ms. Marshall, would you just say that again? Did you say 55 or 65?
55,000, yes, ma'am.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear it. Mr. Johnson?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
My question is going to go towards the redistricting update. So I understand that the lines are having to be drawn and, we are not sure exactly where everyone is, but the February date is the date that you're supposed to have the new lines to be drawn for the election coming up, the primary election, correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
So who all has to do that? Because I was under the impression we were doing everyone, but now I understand that you don't have to do everyone. So, because like some of the cities, for instance, are saying that they're not having to do lines right now, or Atlanta is doing lines. Can you kind of tell us how that is working out?
Basically, to give you the short answer, there have been cities that have basically, I guess, come up with their own timeline, but the date that we were given came from the Secretary of State's office. So as far as we're concerned, to run and be in compliance with the state, we have the February 18th date, but for a certain amount of cities have, again, come up with their own date as far as drawing their lines.
So how would that affect how would that affect compliance, I should say?
Right, since the cities already had municipal elections last year, they have a different deadline than the remainder. Right now, we received the lines for the House, Senate, and the congressional districts. All those went before the General Assembly, so we have that information. The county commissioners have proposed their lines. That's still under review, I believe, for approval, and may change from what we were told. But the cities, on the other hand, since they have no elections coming up, they had a different deadline per the SOS.
And will that affect compliance for us in any way?
Not that we're aware of, no. We're everything that we receive from the school board, district lines, commissioners, we have I think right now we have over 337 proposals altogether of different changes. And we're putting a packet together to have you all to review.
Okay, great, thank you. Also, the primary date, I keep hearing that they are, and I'm just trying to figure out, have you heard anything different about the primary date changing and possibly moving as far as July 26th?
Nothing official.
Yeah, not at this time. They have not communicated any change of date for extending the.
So we're still moving forward with the May 24th vote?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, that's it for now, thank you.
Questions over here to my left? No? I had a question and I completely forgot what it was because I was listening to that. Oh, I know. Mr. Eskridge and Ms. Williams, I just am tracking stuff at the General Assembly related to elections, and I noticed that there was a bill to redraw Public Service Commission districts. I didn't go back and compare previous districts, but you might have somebody take a look at that and just see if Fulton County is impacted. It looks like they're moving counties versus individual precinct lines, so it might not make a difference to us, but it hasn't passed yet, so.
Yes, ma'am. You said Public Service Commission.
Commission, yeah. There's like 5-6 seats. Yeah, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Coming up for this primary, there is going to be, for Uocava ballots, in the event of a runoff, then that process is going to be determined by ranked choice. Have we proceduralized that component?
It has not. We just recently met, as a matter of fact, last week with the Secretary of State's office regarding procedural items, but it has not been formalized fully.
Okay, so you're fundamentally waiting on the SOS?
No, I'm not. But as far as getting guidance, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, so you're looking into it and
Absolutely.
researching what's going on, but the Secretary of State's office will issue some kind of rule or something relative to how that does, so that there's consistency?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, great. Anything else?
Just a question, Mr. Eskridge, about the NCOA. So there were 55,463 that were given to us by the SOS. And then we have 544 voter responses from that 55,000.
As of January 31st, yes, ma'am, that was what was received back.
Okay, and then the time will expire February 13th, and then they will be moved to inactive
That is,
Or-
they will start to move them off.
or removed from the list.
So the ones that were mailed out of state, they will go into cancel status, but the ones that were mailed within the county and no contact is made by Sunday, February 13th, they will move into the inactive status. And we met with the state last week. No, this week, they provided NCOA training and how they would like for the process to go in EMIT. And we attended the training.
Great, thank you so much. And congratulations, too, on your promotion,
Thank you
Ms.
so much.
Marshall.
I appreciate that.
And just one of the things I'd like to just mention for the sake of the people watching, it does get a little bit confusing about the change of address and the address challenges, because there is a process by which the Secretary of State and we follow relative to state law. The General Assembly, in their wisdom, decided to create a second avenue for removals rather than changing the way the Secretary of State would do it to allow citizen challenges to do this. And we appreciate the work that people are doing relative to that. It does create, when we start talking about county budgets and things, it creates an additional level of work for the local staff, which frankly, in my opinion, should be done at the Secretary of State's level. So for those who are interested in doing this, there are groups that have had several months of experience now. They're sitting over here on this side. Y'all can raise your hands. If you're interested in doing it, you have to follow the timeline that is set out in Senate Bill 202. And the minute you notify us, you trigger a whole series of actions that we have to do, including having specially called meetings to manage whatever comes up. So to the extent that we can coordinate those in such a way that they all happen on a calendar that aligns with this, I know we would appreciate it, because we can't change the calendar. But also, it at least gives our staff some predictability to how their workload flows. So when we start talking about the increased budget at Fulton County and other counties, and our budget is always increased by magnitudes because we have nearly 1 million voters, these are the kinds of things that require us to have additional staff or dedicated staff to do certain kinds of things. Because again, these are dictated by state law. We can't say, oh, we could do this more efficiently, or oh, we could do this on a different timeline and it would work out better for everyone. We work with the timeline that we're given, and so sometimes we have to, change the way we staff things in order to accommodate that. So I just wanted to bring that out because more and more people are interested in this, and I appreciate the civic engagement. We always obviously want to be really careful when we remove people from the rolls, but it's also important for people to understand there's a whole series of things that we just discussed here that are timelines that the Secretary of State must follow and we must follow. And, be great if you wanted to talk to your members of the General Assembly about why we don't have one streamlined thing that starts at the Secretaries of State's office and then moves down to the county level. But we'll work through that. And if there, oh, Mr. Johnson.
Dr. Ruth always sparks me with having more questions. I'm sorry. Her questions are always so good. The 55,000 that have been sent out, they have 40 days to reply, they have to the 13th. Do we know how many were approximately, it doesn't have to be the exact number, but approximately how many were in county versus how many were out of state?
Give me just one moment.
And while she's doing that, one of the things that I'm thinking about in this process as we are, I agree, having citizens submit names is, I don't necessarily have a problem with, but I do know what it's doing is creating double work for the staff. So for instance, in this, we have 55,000. If they're out of state, we have X number that's going to be removed. But I guarantee you some of those same numbers that are, same people that are going to be removed are probably some of the same people that are being requested to be moved. And, you know, some citizens may not realize that a lot of these people are going to fall off anyway. It's just that at a certain time, you just do it periodically on a different way.
I'll get that number for you.
Okay, all right, just let me know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And just to your point, I think you do make a really good point. I know with the SOS, the system that they're using, that ERIC system, has about 30 or so states that are part of that system where they double check data to determine whether or not they're out of state. Some states have not opted, like North Carolina. So it would be curious too, Ms. Marshall, to see of the challenges that we have, how many of them may not have been included in the SOS list.
Was that a question?
That's something for us to investigate at a later date.
Yes, I will gather the data.
Thank you so much, Ms.
You're very
Marshall.
welcome.
And I just have to give another shout out to Ms. Marshall because she has been excellent when it comes to the data and working through the data and determining the number of people that addressing the challenges. And so really appreciate her efficiency.
Mr. Wingate.
For the record, correct me, but I don't believe that state currently, let alone Fulton County, is doing anything with ERIC. If you have been, there has not been any reporting at all that I've seen.
I'll need to confirm, but we were instructed that they had begun using ERIC at the last conference.
Yeah, the Secretary of State uses ERIC. The Fulton County doesn't use ERIC,
Correct.
but the state does.
Then what is the state doing with it?
So I believe the state is using that, from my understanding, in addition to this national change of address, to give that complete list to the counties.
In what fashion?
So the ERIC system helps them to understand, or helps them to know whether or not a person has moved out of state, and they check that against the NCOA. And registered. Right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, and what?
And registered. So correct me if I'm wrong. If I move tomorrow to Florida and I register to vote in Florida, the ERIC system is supposed to be able to track that. So the Secretary of State's office is now comparing when Aaron Johnson left Fulton County, and this is the only county I really know in Florida, Broward County. are registered to vote in Broward County in the ERIC system, it should show that and Aaron Johnson, and you can look and see if it's the same one.
Okay, so if the SOS is doing this, to your example, Mr. Johnson, is the SOS getting that record? And if so, what are they doing with it?
In theory,
No,
and
I
correct
mean,
me if I'm wrong,
today,
Dr.
What are they,
Ruth.
yeah.
In theory, what they're doing is removing my name. But the difference is the SOS is only going to do it periodically. They don't have, I don't think anybody has the ability, any government has the ability to do it, say, every month. So they have a timetable upon which they go through and do it. What I think a part of what the chairwoman was mentioning is that now that citizens have the ability to challenge, a citizen can come and do it every month. And then our staff will be required to do that same process every month.
Okay, well, that's, yeah, I'm just curious, based on what's been stated, is that if there is, in fact, our Secretary of State's office that is receiving records from this ERIC system, what happens? In other words, to your example, if you have moved to Broward County and the ERIC system then picks that up, the record then is transferred back to our Secretary of State's office, and you were a former Fulton County employee, does the SOS pass that record to us so that we can remove you?
Employee or voter?
As a voter is how
Okay.
you had stated it, Mr. Johnson, not as an employee.
No, you just said
But
employee, that's why I was asking.
No, it's the mask. No.
Okay.
I didn't. My question is that, again, without interruption, do we get a record from the SOS that updates your record? And if so, has that transpired?
So I would answer like this. I don't want to speak on the operations of the Secretary of State, but what we can do is inquire with them to get a more detailed response to how they're utilizing the ERIC system. But again, that's not something that they then pass down to us. That operates from the Secretary of State's office. So again, we can reach out to them.
And through all of this, that's what triggered my question, because if in fact that's true, I don't think we've ever heard, seen, or any reporting on any updates that have been made based on that particular system called ERIC.
So my understanding is that the NCOA that we get, National Change of Address, they are using those data, information from that, as well as from ERIC. They're checking against a database. So ERIC is a database. It includes names, addresses, date of births, last 4 digits of Social Security numbers. They're checking against that, and that ERIC also receives data from the DDS as well as death certificates. And so they're checking that against the information that they receive from the National Chain of Address. My understanding is that when we receive this list, Fulton County receives this list from the SOS, that has gone through the ERIC database or has been checked against the ERIC database. It's just an additional way to ensure that we have the most accurate information on a voter. Although not all states are in ERIC.
So why don't we do this? Because this is, Ms. Marshall.
I just wanted to state that I do have those numbers that are being requested, and I stand corrected. The total that we actually mailed out was 55,653 instead of 453. So 55,653. 14,513 were out of county. 18,290 were out of state. 22,850 were within Fulton County, within the county. So that gives us the total of 55,653. And we are taking a look at the process as far as people challenging those that have moved out of state, because I have, although we did not deny the request to challenge those voters, I did mention to them that I was able to see that at least 100 or more of those people are on the 40-day clock to be canceled on Sunday. So they still wanted to have the challenge today. So we did the necessary research.
And thank you for that. Right, so this is the confusing thing, and I'm glad we're having this discussion, because it's confusing for everyone, and I'm gonna be very careful about how I say this is an example of bad policy, but you never wanna have policy that runs duplications, because again, we're a big county. We have hundreds of thousands of names that come in and go out every year, right? So we may take out 100,000, but we'll probably gain 100,000 in voter registrations at the churn that we have. So it's a lot of work. I believe that when the individual challenge law passed, it was because people were dissatisfied with the 40-day clock, and the other processes that were in place to give voters chances to respond to, notifications that they got that they might be removed from the rolls. And so it does impact us tremendously. Certainly Ms. Marshall's work, because we have to be extremely careful. We have to match birth dates and parts of Social Security numbers and addresses and go through changes and go through notifications. So we have to send out additional mailings, both to the people who are challenging and all the people who have been challenged, and follow-up letters to the people who have been challenged. And so it is not an efficient way to do things. And the more people that you have touching things, the more possibility there is for error. And the more possibility it is to try to figure out where the error occurred, because you got to go through multiple channels to do that. So we can't do anything about it because we have to follow the law. But for anyone who's listening that might have some concerns about this, the appropriate place to address your concerns is at the level of the General Assembly to talk about that, because we are deflecting costs, we are deflecting staff time that can be used better in other ways, and we are manipulating the data of individuals, citizens, with lots and lots of hands touching it, and that is not ideal in any circumstance. So we will go on from there, unless there's questions or comments, Mr. Wingate?
And I appreciate your comments, Madam Chair. I think that in looking at even some of those that we're going to be reviewing today, you notice that there are certain numbers of electors that are already in canceled status. So what that, I believe, kind of lines up to the good folks that are in our elector community that are providing these challenges, that as they do their work, I'm assuming month in, month out, because we're seeming to see these each month, that without knowing a timetable on how the SOS is providing us files, and then we go through our 40-day process. I don't know whether this is workable or not, but if there was the ability to put that in some kind of a calendar format, and maybe there isn't, I don't know the answer to that, obviously. But if there was, that might give people who are spending probably a very large amount of time developing these challenges. This is not easy work, obviously, for anybody. But given the fact they're doing this work and then find up at a later date that certain electors, as we can see here by the numbers that we're going to be reviewing here in a little bit, some of those have already been determined to be someone to either cancel or perhaps at a minimum move to an inactive file. So, you all are the people that's, responsible for doing this. But if it is possible where the elector public could know fundamentally when these processes are going to take place, then they might be able to refine how they're going about doing their work, which I would think would be perhaps a little more effective if it was post the time that you report back after the closing of a 40-day period. So just something to think about. It may be something that cannot be done, but going back to the chairwoman's point, some streamlining of this certainly seems to be appropriate for everybody's sake.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, I can't remember if it was at the last meeting, we talked about a little bit of frustration not knowing when the Secretary of State's NCOA matches go out. They're not on a schedule, and we've asked for the schedule, but we don't know what that schedule is.
Yeah, well, I think it even kind of hems it up a little bit even more for me is that we don't even seem to be in any level of understanding how this so-called other system called ERIC is utilized. And, you know, to me, I don't know the answer. I've had some bits and pieces. I think I asked a question in one of those other meetings a couple of weeks ago about ERIC, and the only thing was that I heard from the SOS was, yeah, there'll be an interface into the new, we're going to talk about, I guess, too, into the new replacement for ENET. Fine, that's good, but, you know, we're going to have to start providing, my belief is, some level of detail what the heck that means. Because I think, and please don't take me wrong, but it sounds to me like it's some kind of a check and balance on something that we're not even sure is checked and balanced until we get to file, do a mailing, and see what the response is. So as just one board member, would like to know at some point into the future exactly how that system operates. Because if there is use of that, then, you correct me, but I don't believe we've heard anything here today that would indicate what we know about it and how it's used and how it's integrated into whatever files that you may get from the SOS from time to time.
So as the state rolls out the new voter registration application, Jarvis, we have weekly meetings with them. What we can do is include in the next meeting how they're, as you said, interfacing ERIC and planning to utilize it with the new system, and we can report back.
Okay, shall we get a motion to approve the monthly operations report, unless you have a question?
So this is, we have a 90-day clock too, that we do not remove 90 days before an election. And so
Federal election.
Federal election. And so, and that includes a primary. And so that would be very soon. So we will have, my point is, we will have a little bit of a break from our challenges and removals, so.
In fact, I believe this is the last one until we get past the election cycle of the primary and the runoff. Is that right?
We have not.
Is it February 13th?
We have not reached the exact date, so technically, I think it would require a special call meeting to still, but the date we have not finalized or passed, I'd say, the deadline.
Okay,
But we're getting close.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And remember, we have to have 10 days on top of whatever it is that starts the clock of the notification, so it backs out from that. All right, motion to approve the monthly operations report.
Second.
Second, properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Motion passes. Approval of polling locations under new business, Ms. Williams.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. We are requesting polling place changes for 13 locations to be presented today. All relocations have been surveyed for handicap accessibility. The proposed changes have been advertised in the legal organ with the reason for the change noted. Upon approval, all voters affected will be notified via postal mail. Proposal 122, precinct 02L2 and 03I, relocation from Georgia Tech First Center to North Avenue Presbyterian. The first center was unable to accommodate due to to schedule conflicts. I just want to say in regards to this particular proposal, at the time that we advertised it and met with the church, they said they were available. Now they're having some discussion within the church to see if they're going to 100% allow for us to utilize the facility. So we'll have that answer from them by the 14th. And so if they do not approve, we'll have to have another meeting to relocate this location. But we do have an alternative already reserved.
Okay, great, thank you.
But we'll make sure that none of the voters get anything in the mail until it's 100% approved. Okay, Proposal 222, Precinct 03C, from Radcliffe Presbyterian Church to Berean Seventh-day Adventist Church. Proposal 322, Proposal 322, Precinct 06R, First Presbyterian Church, relocated to Presbyterian Church, Peachtree Christian Church. Proposal 422, Precinct 08G, Atlanta History Center, relocated to Peachtree Presbyterian Church. Proposal 522, Precinct 11R, from Mount Carmel Baptist Church, relocated to Junction 2800. Proposal 622, Precinct RW01, Crabapple Middle. It'll be relocated to the new location for Crabapple Middle. The school was relocated, we're just moving to the new building. Proposal 722, Precinct RW02, Independence High School, relocated to, and I apologize if I do not pronounce this correctly, Temple Beth Tivah. Proposal 822, Precinct SS05, SS18A and B, from Abernathy Arts Center to Sandy Springs Christian Church. Proposal 922, Precinct SS07, A, B, and C, from Heritage Hall, Sandy Springs to Lake Forest Elementary School. Proposal 1022, Precinct SS29A, First Baptist Church of Sandy Springs, Cumberland Academy to Sandy Springs United Methodist Church Activity Center. Proposal 1122, Precinct 07M, from Buckhead Theater to Peachtree Road United Methodist Church. Proposal 1222, Precinct UC02C, from The Gathering Place to C.H. Gallant Elementary School. And the final proposal is 1322, Precinct 08A, from Warren T. Jackson Elementary School to Sutton Middle 6th grade campus. And that concludes our proposals for today.
I think you mentioned it at the front. It looks like almost all of them are related to needing to be handicapped accessible, and so the changes were to make that accommodation.
Right. We made sure that all the changes are handicap accessible. The reasons for the change were listed in legal Oregon, but most of them were either schedule conflicts. Warren T. Jackson, the space that we use in that school was not handicap accessible, so therefore we're moving that space.
I see.
And yeah, everybody else was pretty much a schedule change.
Great, thank you.
Can I,
Mr. Johnson?
So the one in for the gathering of 1222, is this going to be a permanent change?
As of right now, yes. That is, even though it's a Union City building, they have an extensive schedule, so they asked us to relocate that location.
Okay. And Mount Carmel, what was that one?
The church declined usage. They have opted out, so we're moving to Junction 2800. That was proposal 522.
So they're moving out altogether?
Yes, we're moving into Junction 2800, per the church's request.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
To my left?
yeah, I have just one quick question. This seems like a lot of changes at this election. Is there a reason for a number of them opting out to being polling locations?
I think the main reason is the majority of them were revenue-generating facilities. So now that they're back up and running, they have decided to go back into normal business operations.
Okay. All right, thank you, Nadine.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The polling locations are approved. Thank you. I'll do this one. We have a approval of a bylaw amendment. We announced it at the last meeting and distributed the language to that. You all have a copy of the language. Basically, the gist of it is that we will continue, as always, to have public comment at these meetings, but we wanted to clarify that we are not going to have public comment at specially called meetings or election-related meetings so that we can conduct that business, but we will always have the public comment at this point. That will also give people who want to come down and talk the opportunity to put it on their schedule when that's there. So, and then cleaned up just a little bit of run-on sentences, which I'm real good at, and so I use my editing skills to do that. Any questions, comments? Is there a motion? Since we talked about it at the last meeting.
Sorry, I have one quick comment. I think that this amendment speaks to those that are concerned about losing their chance to speak at special meetings. At the end of it, at the end of the amendment, you can be invited to speak during if the majority of the members present and voting at the meeting vote in favor of extending public comment. So I think that that we're not taking away anybody's special or freedom of speech. It's just trying to streamline our way through.
All right, no comments, please, from the audience. All right,
I'm done.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, you helped me with the language. I'm somewhat surprised, but let's do a hand count. All those in favor?
Could we have a discussion?
Yeah, sure. I thought we were finished with the discussion. Okay, would you just back out your motions?
I rescind my motion.
Okay.
And I rescind the second.
Okay, great.
So I did hear, a lot of our speakers today, their concern about not being able to speak during special meetings. We don't have them that often. I mean, we do have special meetings. And so I'm wondering if we could amend the language so that we would take comments for regular and special meetings, but not election night and election certification meetings. I mean, we would still have that at the bottom, that if there's a majority, that would still apply, but be able to take public comment for regular and special meetings. And so the exception would be election night and election certification meetings.
Okay, if you are making a motion, we'll look for a second, but it will cut off discussion. So do you want to just wait a minute, or?
I'm not making a motion, I was just being clear, and then I can make the motion after the discussion.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep, with what Dr. Ruth just stated, I do now have a tendency to agree with that. I have also received a good bit of feedback in terms of muffling electors during special meetings. My view in doing this, as long as I have, there's not really much to be discussed on election night, because that's pretty, preliminary and straightforward, and we really don't have any information at that point in time, at the time that we meet, since we start about 6:30, and polls don't close till 7 or 8 o'clock. With regards to the certification timeframe, I think that's obviously pretty straightforward, is that we're, looking at, as board members, we're looking at those numbers that we're being requested to certify, and quite frankly, at that point in time, unless something blaringly jumps out, which it has from time to time, that meeting is to do our certification in Fulton County so we can get to the state on time. But I believe that with everything being considered, plus a couple of comments I've made to electors, that, having board meetings or special meetings doesn't stop you, as it clearly doesn't, from emailing the board, contacting board members, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we take this in, a considerable amount of the time, and that's what we should do. Some of them we can answer, some of them we can't, some of them we have to bring to the, to the front of this board. But I think along the lines of amending that particular section today, that, yeah, I would support and will support the fact that we do allow for public comment during general meetings as well as special meetings.
Okay. I'd like to make a comment to that, but does anybody else have a comment?
Oh.
Ms. Johnson?
Other than slight confusion, because for me, either we're going to do it or we're not. You can, I get it for the regular meetings, and to me, the special election night and election certification meetings are relatively the same, because each one of those meetings, you're there for a specific purpose. This meeting is more broad. We talk about everything. Special meetings is for a special purpose. Election night is specifically for whatever happens that day. And of course, election certification is for that. So if you're gonna take a, you know, I don't know. I look at it and it says that at every meeting, essentially what it says is at every meeting, there's a possibility for public comment. It's just not automatic and advertised. That's the only difference. But we have extended public comment several times. We have added public comment. We've never, I don't recall, since I've been here, and I've been here just a couple of years, we've ever told people they can't speak unless they went beyond their time period or it was at a time they didn't follow the proper procedures of coming in to sign up. And I don't think we would be doing that then, but I just want to take note that special meetings, election night, and election certification meetings are relatively the same meeting. So I just want to make that note.
Okay.
But I'm done.
Well, I will say a little bit to that too. So we've had quite a bit of discussion about this particular issue and added special meetings, election night, election certification meetings in there at the request of some of our members. I know I attend every special meeting because I'm the chair and I have to facilitate these meetings, and I am prepared when I come to regular meetings to stay as long as it takes. My lateness today notwithstanding, I try to arrange my business affairs so that I can be here for as many hours as it takes for us to do what we do. But when we do special meetings, they often come up on a clock, like the one with the voter challenges, where we don't have time to negotiate about when we might meet. We sometimes have to meet literally with very, very little notice. And so to prolong those meetings with public comment prior to getting to the business at hand runs the risk of losing quorums, getting distracted from the business at hand, and other kinds of things. So what we did in crafting this was to be very specific that people will still have the same public comment that you have at regular meetings, every regular meeting, all the time, all the speakers we need to have. And that during special meetings, if there is a reason we want to have public comment, if there is something on the agenda where there are people there that need to speak to it, then we, if we have a quorum, can make a motion and allow public comment, and even allow public comment under particular terms. So we could say we will have public comment on the subject of voter challenges, or we will have public comment on the subject of this, or we'll allow 3 speakers to address this issue and 3 speakers not to address this issue. It gives us a little opportunity to fine-tune how we might want to conduct that meeting so it's best to deal with the topic at hand. So that's where we got to after having lots of discussions amongst ourselves. Is there any other comments, or are we prepared for a motion?
Just, are you suggesting that for the special meetings, that there's a subject, whatever that special meeting is around, we would take public comment?
If it's
related to.
Yeah, so here's how it would go. We'd be at a special meeting. I don't know what the topic would be.
Voter challenges.
Voter challenges. And of course, in the course of the business of a voter challenge, we would invite somebody anyway, because that's not part of public comment. But let's just say we wanted to have public comment on it. We would have a quorum, because it's a special meeting. We'd have to have a quorum. Someone would make the motion to allow comment. We would take a vote, and if the vote prevails, we would allow public comment. We would, or not allow it, that is correct. All right, we're not going to speak back and forth on this. If you can't be quiet while we're conducting our business, you'll have to leave. Thank you. The BRE could also determine some rules of the commentary, right? Let's just say we're here for some topic and there's 150 people and we're going to lose our quorum in 5 minutes. We tell people we'll take 3 on one side, 3 on the other. Everybody gets 2 minutes. Get together, get your comments, and go. They do that in the General Assembly on a fairly regular basis, and they do it in other elected bodies. So we have ways to allow public comment as we choose to have it, and we also start with the assumption that the proper place to bring comment is to our regular meeting, where we will talk about any topic anybody wants to talk about.
So I have another suggestion.
Okay.
What if for the special meeting, we allow public comment, but we can limit the public comment as far as the timing? So we limit public comment to an hour in our regular, when I'm saying we have public, it says for an hour. We will not go over an hour. That's in regular meeting, right. But we could add a time frame for a special meeting. And I hear you, given the time, you know, as far as people schedule coming to a special meeting, and oftentimes it's spur of the moment and you're in the middle of your day, that maybe we only have public comment for 15 minutes.
That option exists in the language as it's written. You would just have to make a motion to do that and then have a vote and do it.
But you still have to have a vote.
That's correct.
Let me, with the proposed language to change this particular section, by having a quorum of the board and then a majority vote to allow for public comment, perhaps we consider that we just also include inside that parameter that option for election night and certification. That way, for the electorate, then we're not placing any restriction potentially against any meeting that we are conducting and have to conduct, for the public. And it gives the board an option to determine, listen, if we don't have anybody there on election night, which we typically don't, it's a moot point. In certification, depending, on, what the audience is and the condition and issues, we may want to opt to have the ability for citizens to be heard. So the suggestion at the bottom line is that just make that board adopted condition to allow for public comment to be spread across any, all of the type of meetings.
Well, this
not
references
with the
special
change.
meetings. We have not historically had public comment on election night and election certification meetings, and I would oppose that. We have
had public comment during election night, believe it or not.
Well, I've not seen it,
Well,
but-
you haven't seen it,
Yeah.
you haven't been here as long, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is,
So let's do,
I just think that, if you want to have, the ability to have some control, the board during, these types of, either it's spatial or election night or certification, then let's just, again, for consideration, just incorporate the other meetings that we have to the same condition.
so I was going to suggest a couple of process suggestions, but I don't want to block the conversation, so if.
So I'm just making sure I'm clear with Mr. Wingate. You're saying right here, add special meeting, election night, and election certification.
If you go down here, that's the new language proposed.
They're the same.
Correct.
One is with
But-
markup and one was without
Right,
markup.
but I'm,
They
even
are the
still,
same
so I'll
language.
point here. So for here, you would say public comment at the special meeting, comma, election night, and certification. Okay.
All right, we can do this a couple ways. We can start from the existing language and vote on that And if it passes, then we're done. We can start with amendments and build up to amendments. So you could do amendments on election certification, election night, special meetings, and then go back to the hierarchy of that. What is your pleasure? Well, I'm going to make a motion. Can I make a motion? I don't think I can make a motion, okay.
You can't.
Well, I'm just surprised we're having this much conversation about something we've talked about for 6 weeks, so.
I still think that I'm going to reinstate my motion to accept language.
Okay. Motion to accept the language as it is.
As it is, as it is.
Is there a second? Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
3-2, the motion passes. Thank you. You're going to talk about poll worker pay increases, Mr. Eskridge?
Madam Chair, we've taken the proper steps to increase the poll worker pay. It's required to work with the HR department along with the county manager's team. But before that, of course, there are cost implications that we needed to run the numbers to see the feasibility of being able to do it for the upcoming May election and the June runoff. And so those, when I was told those numbers have been run for the May and June, the cost implications are roughly around $700,000. So our next step is to have an internal management meeting to again go over the numbers and the feasibility for the May election before then proceeding to request that from the county manager's team.
Okay, questions? Are you asking us to take action, or are you just telling us?
No, ma'am. So we will meet internally again to go over the numbers and then make our recommendation as far as moving forward for the May election. And then we would present that to you all as far as your input and recommendations before, again, the final step is to present that to the county manager's team for approval.
Okay, so you're just notifying us. You don't need our approval to do it.
No, ma'am.
You just
It's
need
an
to get yep. And so just for the purposes of, again, the viewing public, the prompt for this is because you ran a comparison of what we pay relative to other counties. Could you just give us a little more information on what brought us to this?
So again, we looked at in the budget for last year increasing the pay just because of the nature of where we are. It required doing a survey amongst surrounding counties to see what they pay their poll workers, and then to compare that to what we currently pay. And then based upon that, we saw, I guess, opportunity to increase the pay. And then again, the next step was to, at one point, we were trying to resolve if it was required that be voted upon by the BOC. But again, the only steps required is to work with HR and the county manager's team. And so after we've decided to move forward based upon recent discussions, one being with the mayor's meeting on last Friday, we begin to run the numbers to see, again, those cost implications. And now that those have been done, again, we'll need to do a final to see where the increase to the budget fits in with our other kind of unexpected cost increases from redistricting and some, as we diversified our agencies for our temp workers, there's a cost increase in that. So to see where along all those align and fit in, we'll need to, again, have one more meeting before we proceed to move forward.
So what is the county that has the most similar number of voters to us? Is it DeKalb?
It would be, Gwinnett would be the second largest, but I think theirs is still around 100,000.
Okay, and then DeKalb is 552 also, with more precincts. So for example, DeKalb's manager's pay is $360. I don't know, I'm assuming that's a week. Ours is $275, so. And then assistant manager, they pay $300, we pay $200. So we're quite a bit off from comparable counties, it appears. Not quite so off, we're actually more than Gwinnett, so they might, we might set off an explosion here. But it looks like on this chart, the numbers are about the same.
Where are we?
I'm just flipping around looking at, probably on these documents,
go.
if we can get some page numbers, it makes it a
Yeah,
little
got it.
easier. So you look at Cobb County with 510,000 voters. Again, we're going up a little more than that. I would just recommend to you, as you bring this forward, as you start to pull out some things that have similar numbers of precincts, similar numbers of voters, and make a comparison there and kind of see where the averages are.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think you'll get that question, you know, from the Board of Commissioners, and it would make it a little easier. It's good that you've done the work on all of them, but some summaries would probably make a stronger case.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
No.
All right, let's move back. You okay? Okay. Legislative update, Ms. Corbett. Thank you for hanging in there.
Good morning, everyone. Excuse me, let me pack in here. Good morning. We have had a very interesting legislative session so far, and I'll give you just a few highlights that we have been tracking. Wanted to quickly touch on redistricting, which you mentioned. Of course, the congressional and state, House and Senate have all passed through. Counties have been instructed to complete everything this week, along with school boards. So the school boards have both, APS and Fulton schools have both crossed over to the Senate. Fulton County has actually two bills that we're working through with slightly different maps. Senate Bill 437 did cross over, so that one is moving a little bit more quickly. And then there's also a House bill. So those are both in governmental affairs, and we're tracking that very quickly, or we're tracking it closely and working with our delegation. So we do, we know it's tight. We appreciate everyone's patience. It is an interesting process. There are a few specific bills we wanted to highlight for you. One is House Bill 886, which is about security tracking for paper ballots, and specifically addresses the ballot paper. It has a very specific process for how ballot paper has to be secured, the process for signing it out, a chain of custody, all of those kinds of things. There were a few specific concerns. I have asked the team to verify that we received from the Elections Department. I think it was a personnel-related issue, and we have, we believe that was addressed in the substitute in committee. That one has received a favorable report out of governmental affairs, but has not crossed over yet. And what we believe will happen right now, there is a lot of focus on redistricting and some of the governor's priorities. So we think after redistricting, we'll see more bills cross over. March 15th is crossover day, so they do have some time to address that. There are a couple of other bills related to election dates, and specifically making the third Tuesday in March of even numbered years as a permanent special election date, except in an instance when a presidential preference primary is held on a different date, that the special election would be held on that date. And it would also require that that would be the date for any T-SPLOST referenda. That is something that, you know, again, all things considered, a relatively minor adjustment for the department. There is another piece of legislation, excuse me, that is related to House Bill 933, which is related to the ability to inspect documents, election-related documents, specifically ballots and other documents and after returns. This would primarily affect the Clerk of Superior Court, who has custody of those documents after election date, but it is related to elections, so we wanted you to be aware of it. And that is also in governmental affairs. There have also been some discussion, there are actually competing bills related to absentee ballot drop boxes. One, which has been reported a little bit more widely, would eliminate absentee ballot drop boxes altogether. And then there are other bills that would propose to, I guess, address the prohibition or the reduction in absentee ballot drop boxes. So that is an issue that continues to be of concern. Another one, House Bill 1085, we'll just highlight very quickly, and I think this will be the last one, would allow for ranked choice municipal elections, which is something that some of our smaller cities in particular may find as a positive, that they would not then have to bear the cost of a runoff election. So that is one that we are also tracking, also assigned to governmental affairs. I will do my best to answer any questions I can, but we have a team, myself, some of you know Ms. Calhoun, who is our intergovernmental affairs manager. We have a legislative assistant who's at the Capitol almost every day, and we have a lobbying team that works with us as well. So if there are questions I can't answer, I'll be glad to try to track them down for you.
Questions? I have a couple. Ms. Williams, on 886, one of the things that concerns me, and I spoke to it briefly on this voter challenge issue, when we start talking about managing costs, increasing efficiencies, I keep seeing legislation where the part of the conversation isn't, does this increase cost or increase efficiencies? And this is one where I've got some concerns. If we had to track security paper the way this calls, and basically what this says is every single piece of paper must be accounted for. These are blank pieces of paper. These are not ballots. They have to be in boxes, and there's a word handled that is used throughout this very liberally without a definition. Every time anything is handled, it has to have somebody sign off on it, count it, accommodate it. What would this cost us in terms of containers, in terms of additional personnel, storage, counting? Could you just give us a little summary about what this would look like for us? You don't have to account for what the cost would be per se, because you won't know, but just where we'd see an increase.
We would definitely see an increase in staffing. As we understand the bill so far, we would have to put up some type of cage or like evidence room almost for the paper to be stored, sealed, and checked out for each of the system specialist teams. I mean, we have 5 system specialist teams of 20 people. So there's a lot of people that we'd have to check in and out for the paperwork to be put into the carriers. Our biggest concern would be when paper comes back in. We'd also have to have a system to do that as well. So now, but the system itself, it tracks how many paper was used, because you know how many ballots were used, how many people voted. But for us to do that labor of counting every sheet of paper that comes back into the system would cause more staff and cost increase. We'd have to come up with a new system, a new structure in the warehouse to just count every single piece of paper. So it would be a lot of work.
Anybody's ever had to count a ream of paper and try to come up with the same number twice, that would be part of it. Now, right now, we still lock all those papers up, and they still get counted as they go into trays and get counted out. This is just an extra level of
exactly. The papers go out
numbers of times to count.
Correct. Our papers are currently sealed in the cage. They go out sealed in the carriers. They come back sealed in the carriers, so it's completely sealed. But for us to physically count them would be pretty extensive.
Yeah, we probably need machinery.
Yes,
I would think.
if the SOS would approve us using some type of paper counter, we'd have to get approval from them to use some type of mechanical machine to count the paper sheet by sheet, compared to a human person doing that.
Times 100 people that we currently have on staff doing that.
Correct.
Okay. So, just saying, this doesn't provide us with additional security, because if we were to see the introduction of ballots that weren't checked in as people checked in to vote, we would know that we had a miscount and could go back and investigate what happened. There's lots of checks and balances along the way. So this is, again, one of my concerns is we keep seeing legislation introduced by people who don't do this work in an attempt to fix maybe a problem, but one that's not specifically identified, you know, like our dual track of voter challenges, which would be great if somebody wanted to address. So thank you for keeping your eye on this, because, you know, somebody raised it in public comment. I'm concerned about it. The increase in costs relative to some of the legislation that has passed in recent years and some of the things that are going on is really a pass-through to local property tax owners. It is not coming out of state taxes. It's not coming out of federal funds. And now we can't get grants from outside entities that defrayed another 15 million or something last year. And so we're going to continue to see these costs go up, and I appreciate that you guys are watching this closely and appreciate people paying attention. Any other questions?
And I will just mention that we will, we do work very closely with ACCG. We understand that across Georgia, most counties do not have the same issues that we face in Fulton County, just because of the volume, the number of precincts we have, all of that. But the large metro counties do, in many cases, have some of the same issues that we do. So we do work with ACCG on our legislative issues, and we can certainly remind them of that as we look at this piece of legislation.
Thank you. I would love it if you would ask them to make that cost versus process improvement, right? Sure. You know, if it doesn't answer yes to both of those in some coherent fashion, I think it would be helpful for people to understand that these pass-throughs are tremendous.
Yeah. I mean, this is an election year. I know that all of you are very well aware that our legislators are, you know, many of these bills are very partisan in nature. So we are aware of that, but our position is to ensure that that we are able to administer the elections efficiently and effectively and ensure every Fulton County resident can exercise their right to vote. So I think that's our position as we work, and I think that's where ACCG is coming from, is really looking at the nuts and bolts operations of the elections process. So we will be back at your March meeting, and we'll provide an update. We'll be a little bit closer to crossover day, so we'll see some movement on some of these bills.
Ms. Corbett, can you tell us ACCG, you're using an acronym just for all of us?
That's the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. It is the kind of county, they have a very effective government affairs team that monitors all legislation related to county government operations. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Okay, any other questions relative to the legislative report? None? Okay. Ms. Williams, call for an election.
Ms. Ringer is going to cover that topic today.
Madam Chair, we're going to need to remove this item from the agenda. Because of the nature of the election, it actually is a different format than what we normally have, where the Board of Registration Elections would call the election first and then have it moved to the Board of Commissioners. It's actually the reverse here with this T-SPLOS election. The Board of Commissioners are expected to approve it at their next meeting, and then it needs to pass to the Board of Registration Elections. So at this time, we need to move this item off of the agenda.
Do we need to make a motion to do that?
Yes, you do. And
okay.
There may be a need to reconsider the agenda for today.
Oh, we have to reconsider the agenda to do it versus just table this?
You can table it.
Why don't we just have a motion to table this?
Motion to table this item.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. The motion is tabled. So, Ms. Robinson and those who are creating the agenda, keep that on the agenda for next month or until we dispense with it as a tabled item, so that we'll just make a motion to take it off the table and then to move it forward. I just don't want to lose track of it, and I know I will, so thank you. Secretary of State upgrade, I believe this is the moment you've been waiting for. I've been listening in on some of the calls. I'm not sure we have as much information as we'd like by now, but would you like to walk us through this a little bit?
Yeah, so just an update about the new system, which is entitled GARVIS. It stands for the Georgia Registered Voter Information System. This new system will be taking the place of eNet. It is expected to go live as early as March 14th. We have been working with the state, and we have seen you on the calls. Thank you. And more in-depth training is forthcoming. But mostly, I would like to state that in just being in the training sessions, it seems as if GARVIS will be like more modernized and easy to use. It seems to be user-friendly. The SOS is planning a special Fulton train-the-trainer session at our warehouse, our EPC, sometime the week of February 22nd through 25th. So we will make sure that you all are aware of the dates and times so that if you would like to attend, you can do so. Also, the Fulton staff has been invited to 10 of the in-person trainings that will be conducted between February 28th and March 4th. What else would I like to say? We have been meeting with them, and they have been meeting with, with us, all of the management, to just get our input as far as things that we would like to see. And we'll be able to assist in creating the training documents and the new SOPs that will be provided to the counties. There will be a mock election in Fulton and other counties after qualifying is concluded. And that's about it.
Questions? All right, we will continue to, oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just since you brought up SOPs, if someone could send us the information on how to access the SOPs now that we all have Fulton County addresses, and also Firefly.
Yes, ma'am, we will. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, everybody good? Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission ballot approval.
Good morning, Chair and board members. The Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission is requesting our assistance with holding a Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor election to be placed on the general election ballot on November 8th, 2022. The district supervisors serve as an unpaid state officials who represent their counties in support of soil and water conservation activities. They will qualify at the qualifying period in March, but in lieu of paying a qualifying fee, they will be required to get 25 qualified electors of the county to be nominated as a candidate. And it will be vote for two, so they will be nominating two candidates.
Okay, thank you. So what are we approving if we were to make a motion?
You are approving the agreement. Should be a contract agreement.
We're approving putting it on the ballot and the agreement with it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that would be the memorandum of agreement that comes after the information relative to the park bond. Everybody see that? No. Okay, motion?
Motion to approve the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission ballot.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. I see I need to sign something, so I will. Thank you. Next up, voter challenge hearings. Here we go. Ms. Marshall, you want to lead us through how we want to do this today?
We can start off with challenger, Mr. Earl Ferguson.
Madam Chair and members of the board, I'm Earl Ferguson, a registered voter in Fulton County, and I have submitted 58 names to be challenged for removal under the Section 228 of the Georgia law. I think that list that I have provided is pretty clean. There was one on there that I had a question about, so I highlighted it. And I have not discussed that with Ms. Marshall, so I'm open for questions and would like to know what her comments is. Before I do that, may I add something into the conversation you were having about the how this is all worked out? In the December meeting, I submitted my list to the Secretary of State ahead of time, got it back, but not in a timely manner. And that was somewhat helpful. About 2/3 of my list were either on the, had already been put on the standby, and the other, and 1/3 was the process is finished, but they hadn't told them that they were not regular voters. I think it would be very helpful if we were able to arrange a process where before we bring this list in here, it goes to the Secretary of State for comparison.
We could not agree more. I would love it if y'all, since you've got some organization to you, would address that to your members of the General Assembly. I think what we thought would be helpful is if it started at the Secretary of State's office for resolution, and then anything that was left over gets sent to us, and that starts the 10-day. But as you have discovered, and as we have discovered, we have to send it back to the Secretary of State's office within that 10-day window. It is very time-consuming, and appreciate your helpfulness in keeping us on this schedule.
The 10-day window makes it very difficult. One of the things that I'd like to suggest is maybe set up a date for the filing of the names you're going to submit, but not to enter the challenge ahead of time, to give some time for the staff to run through those names without having that 10-day
Right.
scrunch.
Yes, after the first challenges came through, I called Mr. Germany in the Secretary of State's office and suggested those very changes. I have not seen legislation to that effect. Like I said, the only fix for this is to go through the General Assembly. We can't unilaterally do that. We just have to hit the timeline as it comes, and it's a rough one. So, like I said, y'all know your way around the state capitol. They're in session over there. If you can get somebody to introduce legislation to fix that, we'd be grateful.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna let Ms. Marshall tell us what we need to do here.
Provided the findings brought forth by Mr. Ferguson, I recommend removing the 58 electors from the voter rolls.
Those particular voters. Are there any questions on those particular voters?
A comment from Mr. Johnson. I had one reservation, and it was someone who did a change of address to a P.O. box and then registered in a different town. And I highlighted that one, and I
Mr.
take it
Tussey?
that it was okay with Mrs. Marshall.
That's Mr. Tussey? Is that the one that you highlighted?
sorry?
Mr. Tussey? That's the one you highlighted? He indicated a move to welcome North Carolina, but registered to vote in Lexington?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. No questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion is to remove the 58 voters challenged by Mr. Ferguson. Is there a second?
A second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The motion carries. Thank you. Next ones. Thank you,
you.
Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, and I have an envelope to give Ms. Marshall.
Okay. Just hand it to the officer there, please. All right, what's the next one?
Sorry. Next, we will have Ms. Ann Delmas.
Okay, Ms. Delmas.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Ms. Marshall, for all your help. And
Will you just pull that microphone right down into your face? Thank you. I have this.
saying I'm short?
I have the same issue. I had to get a different chair.
Yeah. I'm Elizabeth Ann Delmas, and I'm a registered voter in Fulton County, and I'm challenging 18 voters who have moved to another state. And I sent the information to Ms. Marshall.
Okay.
And thank you, Ms. Marshall, for your help.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So, provided the findings brought forth by Ms. Delmas, I recommend removing the 18 electors from the voter rolls, sorry.
Thank you. Any questions? Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, next up.
Next, we will have Mr. David Hubert.
Morning.
Morning.
Happy to hear any questions on the challenges I've submitted.
Ms. Marshall?
No questions at this time, but I did have a couple of comments. Mr. Hubert submitted close to 500 names, like 400 and something, but we found that 52 of those electors are already in cancel status. So I do have a findings report for you to just let you know that those electors are already in there in cancel status, so I removed them from the challenge. Also, you submitted 109 duplicate names from your January your January challenge. So those electors were removed as well because those 109 were previously listed and already in cancel status. So today you have a total of 262 total electors being challenged, and provided the findings that you submitted, I recommend removing the 262 electors from the voters' roll.
I have one question.
Okay, go ahead.
The names Mr. Hubert provided, there's 4 of them that don't have a first name. And I'm just wondering, how do we know who that is?
Give me just one moment to look at the spreadsheet because I have them electronically. I didn't print them out.
Okay.
One moment. Thank you.
That may have been an oversight on mine. I separated, I removed the duplicates, so when I received the challenge, the names were on there twice. So I removed the duplicates. So I might have removed that name because it repeated. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, we can email you the names of those 4 people.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious that we make sure we have all the information before we.
All right.
So do you want to hold off on those 4 or?
Do you have the information in front of you? Or is it going to take you a minute?
Do you know the ones
I have
that-
it in front of me. I don't have like Jessica's printout, but I do have what was submitted. So what's the last name or what information? Thank you,
Because
Mr. Judge.
I don't actually even.
Michael. So one is last name Michael. There's a last name John M.
Oh.
It doesn't have a first name.
Oh, there's 4 of them. Alejandro.
I can email you the. The spreadsheet.
So in essence, you're saying we have first names for these persons,
But they're just not.
they're
Yes,
just
so I
not
will-
on this document.
That is correct. It was a misprint, but first names were provided in order to perform the necessary research.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right. That answers that question. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, are you good to go? Okay. So the motion then is to remove the 262 as recommended. Is there, did someone second that?
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. You made the motion to remove the 262. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and
We
second. All those in favor?
I wanted to comment to this one.
All right, well, hold on. You're going to have to remove your motion
I remove my second.
and, okay.
Give me a chance to talk.
Just grab my line
Miss
if I'm
Mar-
not paying attention.
Ms. Marshall, let me, just for clarification, on Ms. Delmas's challenge where we removed 18, 5 of them, as per your recommendation, these electors are in cancel status, removed from challenge. In terms of the status, electors are in canceled, moved out of state, canceled voters' request, canceled no activity for to general election status. The same definitions apply to Mr. Hubert's challenge.
So thank you so
And those
much.
52 are not included in those that you're recommending for removal. Can you help clarify?
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you so much. So as Chair stated, this is a lot of detailed work in compiling all of this information and creating these finding reports in addition to redistricting. So there is an error on Ms. Delmas. Instead of it being 18, let's just count it as 13, being that 5 are already in cancel status. There's no reason to challenge them for removal. Thank you so much. So corrected, 13 instead of 18 for Ann Delmas, please. Thank you.
Do we need to correct that? Do we need to redo that vote? Okay. All right. Let's have a motion that would, how do we do that? Do we recall that and just correct it?
Do a motion to approve the revised and Delmas.
We got to cancel the first one first.
Yeah, I'm having a brain freeze here.
So I think you would need to
Motion to
rescind the
reconsider.
initial motion for approval of the 18, removal of the 18 electors, and then do a new motion for removal of the 13.
All right, so we're going to have a motion to reconsider the vote on the Ann Delmas challenge. Somebody want to move that?
I move to reconsider the vote on the, a list selected by Ann Delmas.
Second?
I second.
Sorry, I'm looking to the left. I'm left-handed, that's where I go, you know. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, there are none. It's been reconsidered, and I take now a motion with the correct number on there.
Madam Chair, make a motion to revise the count on Ms. Delmas's challenge from 18 to 13.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, there are none. Thank you. Back to the motion. Thanks for your patience, Mr. Hubert. On the 262 total electors being challenged, somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Properly moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. They're removed. Thank you. Appreciate your patience.
One thing on these duplicates, that must be on the database I've got, so we hadn't thought of that error occurring, so we'll double check the databases in the future so that will not happen.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Is it possible for us to know who are in the challenge status so that we can balance our books on which one we've taken off and which one we're already ready to come off? Is there a way to do that without a lot of?
Yes, sir, I can email you this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And remember, get that General Assembly to fix this for us, and we'll come down and testify, but it'd be great if somebody else would initiate the legislation. Thanks very much. Anything else? Any need for an executive session? Not for litigation or anything? No? We're good? Okay.
Madam Chair, make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? There are none. We're adjourned.
Might need lunch today.